Hey gang, just wanted to put together a quick video showing the setup for this scene. It's pretty simple, but I'll go through the scene setup and then how I made each one of these shapes so far. There are 8, so hopefully I'm not going to take up too much time going through them, but let's jump right in. I'll turn off my camera so you can see my screen unadulterated. All right, so here is my main setup. Now, one of the things I do when I'm working with a lot of different stuff in the same scene is I put together takes for each thing that I want to make. So the takes in cinema let you basically turn off layers and render them separately. So like each one of these takes exists in the scene, and I can change what camera it works to and what render setting it goes with. But I kind of create these after the fact. So like I create the stuff first, and then I go into each take and turn the layers on and off, or the objects on and off. And it just gives a lot more flexibility. So let's look at the scene setup. So the scene setup is very simple. Let me turn off the render thing. And so here is my scene. Very simple. You'll notice that there's not a lot going on. These panels are my lights. This is the backdrop. This is my camera, which is like way out in the distance because I have a long focal length. You can see how that setup is a super telephoto 300mm lens. So that flattens out the depth that you get in the scene. So you'll get like a nice, like the vanishing points aren't super apparent. If you were to change the vanishing point, it changes the look quite a bit. So let's show what that looks like real quick. So if the default that you get with this a lens in cinema is 36. So you'll notice it's way far out, but let's move the camera in just to see what that looks like. If we were to crop in on the photo, you'll notice like if we were to crop in similar amount, like it just looks way more distorted because you're up close to the object, and all that perspective is there. So if we switch back, again, it flattens things out, gives it a more like cinematic portrait-like look. So that's really important. And then the lights are very simple as well. So these lights do some real subtle things, but this is my kicker. So a kicker is meant to reflect light off the backdrop just a little bit. And I don't have much in here, but I'm using a softbox texture from Grayscale Gorilla, and I have this set up to only apply to the background plane. So it won't cast light on these, but it will bounce light onto these, which is what you want. You don't want it to illuminate things you don't want. And then this fill light, which is I have set up to the right, does everything else in the scene, but it excludes the plane. And this is a very simple light. There's no texture on it. But it adds some fill. So like if we were to turn this off, it makes like the edges of the scene just a little bit dimmer. And you're like wondering, why is the rest of the scene lit up still? Well, that's because I'm using an HDRI. So this HDRI is another one from Grayscale Gorilla. This is the Creative Office one. Has a nice soft kind of feel to it, a little bit warmer, with some earth tones, which I think complements, this more realistic kind of look. Again, very simple setup. I'd have it like, I'm not even like rotating the HDRI any. It's all the same. Very low. But if just to see what it looks like without this HDRI, you notice there's very little light coming into the scene. So this HDRI just adds like a ton of all of these reflections because you're reflecting like the HDRI, and then the back plate kind of is like bouncing some of that light around too. Very, very simple. So let's look at these different things. So I'll switch to the twist one, and that'll turn on. And I probably have it set up a little bit weird here. So let me go back turn that back on so it's correct. It'll take a minute to switch, and then I need to change back to the original camera. All right, so this one is pretty simple. It has a disk in a cloner, and this disk has like a cloth surface modifier. What this does is a disk is just like a flat plane, no geometry. So like the cloth surface adds just a little bit of depth, a 1 centimeter of depth. I can add more to this, and it would change all of the petals of this twist illustration. So I'll change it from 1 to 4, and you'll notice it changes. It'll take a minute for the render to update. So like depending on the look you want, I wanted something that was more like delicate looking. So just having like 1 centimeter made sense. And then that goes into, disappeared. I don't know why. Sometimes, things do what they do in cinema. You just have to refresh the render view. And I'm using Redshift, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. So then these are in a cloner. So what the cloner does is it duplicates the disk in a radial. I have it set to a radial with a 0 centimeter radius, so they're all at the same axis, and then I just duplicate it around in a circle. And again, I'll turn off the render view so we can see this happening in real time. So here we have our sphere here, and we can change the amount of duplicates, and it just adds more. So like it now has 28, so much denser, but that wasn't the look I wanted. So 9 seemed like a good amount. And then I have a twist modifier on this. So what this does is it takes the geometry that's in the same grouping and twists it all. So you can animate this, of course, and it changes like the twisting of the geometry. So you can twist this as much as you want. You can get really crazy with it. And there's a lot of flexibility here. And I use this in another one of these illustrations, the one for when they duplicate, like around the loop. All right, so moving on. Burst. Let's go to burst next. Or twirl, sorry. I called this one twirl when I posted it, but I got to turn some stuff back on because it slows down the file if I don't. All right, so let's look at this one. So this one is again very simple. It is some capsules in a null, and let's turn off some of this stuff here. So let's look at it without. So these capsules are all kind of like in this kind of like orientation like this, and then I put it in a cloner, another radial cloner, and then put this in a volume builder to smooth out the intersections of where they all come together in the middle. So you can kind of see, it's probably hard to see. Let me turn the materials off here so we can see. So you can kind of see like it's a little messy, like up close, but it's still nice. You can see what it looks like rendered. And because if I would have like done a more close-up shot, I probably would have smoothed out some of this stuff. But for the purposes of what I was trying to do, this is very simple. So let's turn all this stuff off again, so my file doesn't go crazy, and then I'll go to the next one. So stretch. Let's see, this one, back. This is some more volume builder fun. So what this is I took a cube and I put it in an atom array. So what an atom array does, let's turn off some of this stuff so you can see what that does, is it takes the cube, we'll start at the basic, and then draws like geometry on the edges of the cube. So this is still like an editable object. So if I were to increase like the number of points, it adds more points, and you smooth those out with the subdivision, and like I could then put this back in the volume builder to give it that kind of like gooey look. But again, I wanted it to be more simple, so that's why it has the simple thing. And I put it in a twist again to twist it in that fashion. And then I just animated the height of that cube inside of the twist. All right, next one. Let's see what we got next. We got this one, which everyone seems to really like. This is a very simple one, but the animation, I think, really helps make it satisfying. So let's look at how this works. So there's a few objects here, very simple. So there's just a regular like square or rectangle object, which I adjusted the parameters of, gave it some radius so that it has like that curved look. Then I put an extrude on it so that it has depth. Put a wood material on it, and then I put this inside of a null that's offset from where its center point is. But I put the center point at the point of the cylinder, which I modeled myself, and put like a bevel on it to give it some rounded edges. And then the rotation comes from this pivot point. So as you like scrub on the timeline, it rotates around the cylinder, and then I rotate. I put all of this. I put this another group, another null, with all of these objects inside of it, and then I rotated that just 180 degrees. So like it moves around and comes back. And I didn't make a perfect loop, although that could be nice. Very satisfying. Maybe I'll do that at some point. All right, next. Revealing. So this one, again, very simple. I wanted to make like some kind of, it's like a hidden object. So like when you first look at this scene, you don't see that it's anything but the coin that you see here. And then they slide apart, and you see like there's another object behind, and it rotates back around. So this one, again, is pretty simple. You'll notice that there's a Taurus for the one behind. And I used on the material a frontal projection. So that means the material's texture stays the same regardless of how you look at it. So if we were to change the camera angle or rotate the object, the texture would appear the same, which adds like a kind of interesting look to it. And then this coin, the way these animate is, again, very simple. There's a center point, which is aligned like right to the middle of these objects. Let's select it, and you'll see like this, the pivot point is right between the two. So that when I animate one coin, I animate the coin to the one side and the Taurus to the other, these move the way you want. So like, kind of see how it's working here. Moves, and then I rotate the pivot 180 degrees, and then I move them back together. So the coins don't actually shift position, it's the rotation of that main null. All right, moving on. Duplicating. So this one's fun. Again, a very simple scene. I think that's kind of like the important part for this series, was like to make each of these things very simple. I put a disk in a null, and I put that in a cloner, but I offset the position of the disk. So what that means is this, you'll notice like when I clicked on the null that contains the disk, it's at the center point of this illustration, but like the disk is not. So that means as it duplicates the disk, they are offset too, which means you can change the position and the radius of like the duplication. So you can kind of see like I could have animated like the position of this disk to make it kind of like come together too, which could be fun. And then to get like the duplicating look, I keyframed the number of clones and I matched it to the amount of frames that I had. So like as you advance through this, it it adds one clone per frame. So I have 61 frames here. So I needed to add 61 clones. So it starts with 15 and ends with 76. So 61. And then again, there's a twist modifier or twist effector on the entire thing so that I can get that bent look. And then I rotate it just a little bit. Fresh off the press today, this scrape one. So again, this is real simple setup. This is two hemispheres with a cloth modifier, each with a bevel on it to give it some roundedness. I used some of Grayscale Gorilla's new tactile materials to give it this wood look for the bottom half. And I used Signal, which is a Grayscale Gorilla Plus plugin, which lets you animate things without using keyframes. So I wanted them both to kind of like slide apart and then come back together and slide apart. And then like it's like a perfect loop. So each one of these signal things changes its position from 20 to -20, and then the curve of that movement is here. And you can manually do this. Usually you have this set to linear, and then you can use like some of their pre-built easing. But because I wanted it to loop, I wanted to be able to control this. So I created a custom curve here. And then there's a rotation curve too, which matches the same thing, but it goes from -30 to 30, and that gives it the tilt that you see in the main illustration. So like as it tilts, gives that look. Pretty cool. Last but not least, ripples. So this is like a forbidden pickle. This is fun one, and I only did 2 of these this past day because this one took a little bit more time than I wanted to. So what I did was, I don't have the objects here anymore, but I took a cylinder object and a sphere object, and I cloned the spheres like in rings around the shape, and then I put them all into a volume builder, and then converted that to some geometry and remeshed it so that it has much less geometry to it. And then I used a cloth tag on the object to make it, flowy. And you'll notice here I have a sphere here, but it's turned off. And what I did with the sphere, I used something in Cinema called Cappuccino, which this is what the window looks like. It lets you create keyframes in real time as you drag something around. And I used it as a collider to kind of like bump into the pickle as it was animating, so I could like art direct the ripples and things that I was getting. There's tutorials out there that show how Cappuccino works in this context. EJ Hassenfratz created a really nice one, which really breaks it down, makes it simple. Look it up. And I just followed that, and I've used this on a few projects so far, and I really liked it. Anyway, so that's the project for this. I forgot to mention for this, to get like that floaty kind of look, you have to set like the scene to not have any gravity. So like the scene has 0 gravity, and then I have a turbulence force, which gives it some amount of movement inside of that 0 gravity space. Think of it like 3-dimensional noise, which has force that can affect simulations and things. So that's the basics of all of these. Let me know what you think, and thanks for watching. Bye-bye.